Builders of Web3 envision the next iteration of the internet to empower artists, creators, and give us the tools for financial independence. Is it fulfilling that potential or repeating the flaws of Web2? Joining us now to explore is Tricia Wang, co-founder of the Crypto Research and Design Lab, or also known as CRADL. All right.
That's right.
Hey, so great for having you join us. Thank you so much. All right, so Tricia, you wrote an op-ed for us at CoinDesk. It was back in the past July. And you say, I'm a huge proponent of the idea that Web3 is for everyone, but we are on track to repeating Web 2, where we had a small class of people building tools for everyone globally. What do you mean by that? Explain.
And I still believe it, but we're making a change. You know, when I wrote that op-ed, it was really reflecting a lot of the research that we've done at CRADL to look at, well, why, we asked the question, why aren't products easier to use in Web 3? There's a lot of talk about Web 3, a lot of hype around it, and if you look around, you're like, all right, so what is it actually doing? And one of the things we found out was that, while there's a lot of excitement over Web3, the barriers to entry are so high. Even though we have many people of color, way more people of color in Web3 than in Web2, still it is a very, very homogenous field. If you go to conferences, if you go to hackathons, if you look at builders, if you look at those who are controlling deal flow and deploying capital, those who are receiving capital, it's still a primarily white male audience. That's just a reality. We need more women, we need people of color, we need more indigenous people, we need more non-Westerners into the space if we truly are going to make Web3 for everyone. So when we did this research, we're like, well, what are one of the best ways, fastest ways, right? We could actually make a meaningful difference in the industry. And we were talking to Michael Casey about it, and Michael Casey's, from CoinDesk, and we came up with this idea, why don't we actually, redesign the typical hackathon? Because hackathons are designed to actually bring more products, new kind of products into the space, but really they're only optimized right now, at least in Web3, to bring more developers into this space. But if we actually are going to make Web3 for everybody, we need more domain experts. We need people building from communities. So that's where the Web3-thon was born.
Okay, so yeah, you were part of the Web3-a-thon, which just announced their winners. So maybe you could tell us about who the winners were.
Yeah, so after 14 weeks of building, we announced, first we launched at Consensus, right, the flagship event of CoinDesk in June in Austin, Texas. And now we just announced literally here in New York City at Ideas, the 33 winners and the 15 standouts. And it's incredible, over 15 L1s, 15 chains. And these are the kind of winners that we announce. You don't usually get these at typical hackathons, at least Web3 ones, right? If you looked at the winners, they were so brown, they were so black, they were so indigenous, they were so female, right? And they also had different kinds of abilities, right? We had we had Jeffrey Miller, who's at 17 plus years of experience as an industrial hygienist. And he created a program called Ox Saviors, which is really to use the blockchain to allow workers with, kind of disability or any kind of harms from the workplace, from the industrial workplace, to track their records from workplace to workplace. So empowering workers. It's a worker rights tool, truly utilizing the blockchain. We had HBCU Made, a team working on the 10 million plus, people who have gone to historically black colleges and university. And typically, historically black colleges and universities have a harder time with getting endowment because they don't have the generations and generations of wealth passed down. And so the team is really coming up with an innovative solution using the blockchain to connect the alumni with current students. These kind of projects you wouldn't typically get, but because we actively recruited through our partners, we had, Black Bitcoin billionaires as our partners. We had Africa Blockchain Institute. They were able to recruit their networks and come in. So that's why we had this amazing crew from Kenya called ClickSpace, where they're actually Kenyan engineers creating financial products for Kenyans. And so I just think it's incredible to see the kind of range you would get when you actually truly use your network and target people from communities.
And what kind of criteria did you use to find these winners that may differ from your regular hackathon?
Such a great question, because our biggest criteria that we said, typically most hackathons, you have to be Web3 native, you have to be able to program in Web3, you have to know what Web3 is, and you have to understand all the tooling and know all the L1s and know all this language. That kind of seems intimidating for a new person, when really it's once you're in it, as eventually you learn the language and it's you just get it, right? But if you're new, what what we said is like, you do not have to code. You do not have to know any of these things. The requirement is that you know your community, that you represent your community, and you keep it real for your community. So you know what's best for your community. You're not going to harm your community. And so we asked people to really just make sure they bring that knowledge forward. And then because there was a 14-week program, they could, beef up their tech skills. And we said, if you don't know a developer, it's fine, because our turnkey partner, Hacker Earth, has the largest community of web developers. And so many people were looking for developers. So for example, we had 2 indigenous leaders. One, for example, his name is Palm. His team comes from the Mount Shasta region in California and the Winnemucca tribe. And he was like, I've been trying to protect, restore Mount Shasta, this whole dam that's like ruined his environment in his community. He was like, I want to actually make sure that we restore the dam and protect the Chinook salmon. So he created a salmon game, right? And as we heard from yesterday, the ideas, it's like games are what's going to usher the next growth of Web3. And so someone like him, he didn't actually have the programming expertise, but then he met a programmer named Martha Ione, who became his co-founder, and they were able to build this product together. But the first stage of submission, which is totally unlike any other hackathon, was no code. Where like your requirement is to actually submit a project and prove that do you understand the total addressable problem, the TAP, instead of jumping straight to the TAM. We're like, let's not focus just on TAM. We can do TAM later, but we have to do TAM and TAP together. So that was one of the requirements, no code. And then at stage 2, you then submit on code, on chain, when you have a developer. But we made things like that so we remove the barriers to welcome a wider group of people into Web3.
That's excellent. I love the diversity issue. I love that you could just go in without the tech, which can often be that barrier to entry, but and still create these amazing projects for communities.